welcome everybody to the Boys and Woods podcast. Today we have Keith Murphy here. He is a fantastic host of many shows, podcast as well, and he has his own TV network ish. You going around, you going to all these places. I know I've tried. We've been playing phone tag and Instagram tag, trying to get you on here for a while. So appreciate you coming on, Keith.
I am glad to be here. I'm sorry it's taken a little bit of the tag back and forth, but it's a busy time of the year, and just happy to sit down, especially after that's a good open you have there. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a
Thank you.
good show open.
yeah,
Boys in the
Thank you.
Woods, let's do it.
yeah.
Let's do it. It's way better than the first one. It had a
Oh,
QR
yes.
code, and
We
we
don't know
had
where it
no
brought
idea
you.
where it
Yeah.
was sending people. We had no idea.
There's a few people
Oh, I
there.
don't know what happened to him.
We
Yeah.
had no idea. Yeah, so a small bio from you here. You've been, and let me make sure I've got the actual date on this for working for 13 News and a sports director of sports news from the 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. hour at the ABC, if I'm reading this correctly.
It's
Probably not.
NBC.
NBC. Yeah,
That's all right.
my
It's a
eyes are
network.
crossed.
Yeah, it's a network. Yeah, I anchor the 6 and 10 p.m. sports, and on Sunday nights we do a sports and pop culture kind of show. It's called Sound Off.
Yeah.
And in the afternoons, I have a radio show with Andy Fales called Murph and Andy, and that's on iHeart station here locally. And these days, a lot of people watch it or listen to it via podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now your list of awards is really out of this world here, Keith. Can you tell us a little bit about your just the achievement that catches your eye every time you walk into your room?
Um, Probably my trying to be a good family guy is what
Yeah.
I'm most proud of. I have, I mean, I've been fortunate to win a few awards, and I think mostly they've come later in life because
Yeah.
I think you get older and that
Wiser.
tends to happen. I probably didn't win some awards for stuff I feel like maybe I did a better job than some of the things I have won an award for. So I really sincerely try not to attach any self-worth to that kind of thing because I think it's pretty arbitrary. And I don't think anybody ever listens or watches because of an award. I think mostly it's to feel appreciated or maybe pat yourself on the back. And I'm grateful. I'm not
Yeah.
dismissing anytime somebody
Yeah.
says you've won this. I appreciate it. And of course, there's a part of my ego that feels like, wow, this is awesome. I've made it. I've done okay.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I can't think of a single person who's ever walked up to me and said, I watch you because of that award you won. It's just like some of my all-time favorite movies haven't been near an Academy Award nomination.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. It's
So-
just I love them, and
Yeah. I guess
nobody nominated Tombstone or Smoking the Bandit or Die Hard or
Right.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles
Yeah.
or Christmas
I'm
Vacation.
glad,
or
I'm really
Dumb and
glad you
Dumber.
brought that up. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. There ain't a person I watch because that person's won an award. Yeah. That is.
And have you seen some of the movies that have won Best Picture? There's a couple of I was like, what in the world am I missing? Because this is just going over my head, and it's absolute
Warner
crap.
Brothers' biggest hit to
Right.
date, is Barbie. So,
Yeah, we'll pass on
But
that
thank
one.
you. I mean, thank you for saying that. And
yeah,
and again, I'm not trying to be falsely
No.
humble or anything. I do appreciate it, and it is nice to be recognized, as I'm sure you both know. It's always nice
Yeah.
to feel appreciated, especially when it's from your peers.
absolutely.
But just overall, it's going to be a slow decline if you attach your self-worth to whether you win awards or not.
Yeah. So
That's why we don't apply for any of them as a podcast. Charles and I, we don't want to spend the money to go to get one. If you guys want to send us one, though, we'll take one.
Hey, that's another way to go too. You can't win if you don't apply.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. So now you had mentioned your family and being the family man, and I've noticed via the internet you have kept them out of the limelight. How difficult was that as your years have gone on? Because from what I'm seeing, you absolutely love your family, and the more you would love to talk about them, we would love to hear it. but whatever you're comfortable with, Keith.
I think it's kind of the change in social media and society. I would say like we're empty nesters now.
Yeah.
Our last son is at Arizona State where he's having way too much fun. But
Party school.
I, I
man, yeah, that looks like a good time. He
so the
just has to
grass
remember to
is
go to
starting
class.
to be cut by you now. Is that
Oh,
that's
well, yeah, I'm thinking of going Rodney Dangerfield, going back to school. But yeah, over time, and I have thought about that, but like I share things about my wife
Mhm.
Jenny and our kids. The younger kids tend to be in social media a lot more than our older kids were because there wasn't Twitter, X, whatever they call it now. There wasn't
Yeah, yeah,
Facebook when they were kids, and it has changed. And I try to stay on the right side of that, sharing some of your life, which some of the people who follow me like to see,
yeah.
some of the life's experiences, but trying to stop short of that. Here's what I'm having for dinner tonight, or yeah,
Yeah,
I'm reading to my wife in bed here, carrying this live so that you can see
yeah,
it. You try to find the line of where too much and not cross over into self-indulgence or invasion of privacy. And I'm not
yeah.
exactly sure where the line is. It's just usually kind of like the judge's definition of pornography. It's hard to
Yeah.
define, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could tell you via the internet searches that I do, you have done very, very well.
Oh,
And
good.
and speaking with that too, it brings up a question for me. So you've been in this sportscasting for the pre-social media, and now you entered into the social media also. How is that transitioning like in the sports broadcasting world where it's no longer just, hey, you'll see me on these days. Now to keep in touch and to keep progressing forward, you've got to be there constantly. How did that go for you
Uh, I think
in
it's gone
call-ups?
well, but I think you have to, like anything, you have to adapt, you have to evolve, or you perish, or you need to get out of it.
Yeah,
There's some people, veteran people, that they really resisted all these changes and wanted things to be the way they were. But you can want things to be the way they were, but doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be that way. You can ask many of the newspapers that are now shuttered and missed in many
yeah,
communities. You have to adapt. So the thing that's changed dramatically in my decades has been when somebody sits down now, they know the score they need to know. They've probably seen the highlights on their phone. So you have to offer something different. You have to offer, analysis or perspective or an opinion. And you have to try to build up enough trust so that they seek out your opinion or your analysis. If all you are offering is the scores and highlights, they'll stop coming to you because they can get that other places.
yeah,
And if you're just offering up, like we used to do when I first started, we would do national sports too, but there's just
Yep.
no need. Nobody's watching their local sports person for national sports unless it's the rare thing that crosses over into widespread interest, like Tiger Woods is running away with the Masters, or something
yeah.
happens that becomes local because everybody's doing it. Taylor Swift is at a Chiefs game, that kind of thing.
Did you
So,
see his jerseys went up 400%?
not surprised. You
No.
combine the two biggest entertainment industries in
That's right.
America, the
Yeah.
NFL and Taylor Swift.
Well, I don't know if Keith, I don't know if you want to
Controversy
get into
goes to
this
the
right away
wind.
because if maybe you're saving this one for your show. But Charles and I had just spoke about this. You don't have to comment on it. If you could just say no comment. But Charles and I did watch the Cade McNamara interview, and as being Michigan fans, we've been following Cade's career since he's
Mhm.
been at Iowa, same as Eric All. Probably because we're fans of him as well. But the comments today seemed very bitter towards the coaching staff, and I don't know if that's a blame game or if that's something that you could speak on. Is it just maybe the fact that there's pressure? Is there pressure at Iowa for Cade to succeed? I mean,
I think he definitely feels that in all the best ways. I don't think he's under any kind of advanced scrutiny from fans or anything, but I think he came here genuinely believing that with his help and some of these other pieces like Eric All, that the offense was finally going to move into the 21st century and they were going to be able to score and move the football and look good doing it. And I think Cade believed that with all his heart. And I think many of us believed, not that it was going to become the Miami Dolphins at this point or some high scoring offense, USC, but I think we thought it would at least look better than it has. And Saturday at Penn State was such a colossal disaster. That's one of the worst team offensive performances in history
It
that I
granted.
think, and it's a good Penn State
Yeah.
team, but even, Cade, who is trying to play through a quad injury and can't move, that's certainly hampering him. But they just look terrible. They're not getting the ball to receivers. They didn't score at all. And I think he does feel both pressure for externally and internally. You can
Yeah.
tell how badly he wants to deliver what he thought he would deliver, and it just wasn't there at all. Now, with that schedule, they could win 9 or 10, maybe even they technically could win 11 games,
I think
and
potentially
everybody
you're on the
will,
table. Yeah.
yeah, they will forget. They don't play a ranked team the rest of the way. They could
No.
finish 10-2, 9-3, and this loss will start to feel better to people over time. We always overreact to wins and losses, but that was terrible. And you mix in the Brian Ferentz factor and the nepotism, and
Well, I would
Kirk's
think that
stubbornness to change, and it's kind of a
yeah.
recipe for a lot of criticism.
I would think the criticism is more probably aimed towards the fact that this is a continuous thing that's been going on at Iowa. As far as Ferentz, it's just Ferentz offense. A lot of people just kind of, they point the finger at that. It doesn't matter who's quarterback because you had Beathard, you had, all these guys. I mean, they've had great tight ends over the years that are obviously in the NFL. There's tons of them. There's at least 4 off the top of my head that I could name right now that are all
Right.
pros.
Yeah, your point is a good one about it being Kirk Ferentz. I mean, Brian Ferentz is low hanging fruit for criticism, and I think we all understand why.
Right.
But when you go back and look at the 25 years of Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, they've had some really good teams. They've won a couple of Big Ten championships, but the one constant through most of that is the offensive coordinator is usually the most criticized coach, whether it was Ken O'Keefe or later Greg Davis and now Brian Ferentz. And I think the reality is they are doing what Kirk Ferentz wants
Yeah.
done.
They
And
haven't
he
moved.
is running an antiquated offense.
Yep.
And they stay in most games with great defense and great special teams, trying to flip the field and win the game possession, win the field. But the thing that's changing now, they're now getting blown out against the good teams, like the elite teams, like Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. They used to be able to compete in those games, try to keep it close, and maybe they block a punt late and they steal a win.
Yeah.
They're not doing that now. I mean, even going back to the Big Ten championship game, which as a Michigan fan, you'll remember was like 42-3 and felt like 82-3.
Yeah.
And then last year, there were Hawkeye fans who were relieved that Iowa lost that game they shouldn't have against Nebraska because they weren't really keen about going back and playing Michigan again.
Yeah. No, I mean, it does. It's got to get tough. I mean, to your point, yes, as a Michigan fan, we would hear, and this is something we've discussed even on this show, and I think I've mentioned, I think we're thinking too much about past Iowa, not future Iowa. And there isn't a lot in future Iowa that scares me.
But here's the thing, and I think you and I brought this up, Charles.
Yeah.
When was the last time you watched? And he's watched a lot of Iowa. So when was the last time you saw a guy in motion at Iowa, and you thought that guy was streaking down the field, and they were going to go play action, and he was going to throw it deep?
Right.
It's been a long time.
But the thought process is never Iowa's offense. It was from another state looking at it from out of bounds. It was always Iowa's defense. And like Keith had said, you really hated their special teams because if we lost, it was the block punt or a block kick or a fake field goal that took the cake in those close games. I'm not feeling the closeness. And I don't know if the stank from Nebraska is making its way via jet stream, but the Lord help us.
Well, and I think that's why some fans are paralyzed because they do appreciate and like and respect Kirk Ferentz for everything he's done. And it is harder to win at Iowa than it is at Michigan or Ohio State or many places. Like the in-state rival here, Iowa State, has never won 10 games in a season. That's going back more than 100 years. It never had a 10-win season. Kirk Ferentz has had like 5 or 6 of those
Yeah.
just in the 25 years.
And a
So
lot of magical moments too. I
yeah,
mean,
oh yeah, and
yeah,
I think fans appreciate what Kirk has done, but now they're in that uncomfortable space of, okay, don't think we can actually compete for championships, but we need to be careful
yeah.
what we wish for because we don't want to be Nebraska. Because remember
Right.
when 9 wins wasn't good enough for Nebraska?
Yeah.
How's that been treating
How's
Nebraska
that
the
been true?
past
Well,
15 years or so?
I think it was Bill Parcells who said that he was describing the NFL, but it's the same thing when you go down you're in a caged tiger, and that tiger's hungry in those
Mhm.
situations. And it is sports becomes a lot of what have you done for me lately, or what are you doing for me now, not what have you done for me lately. And I think coaches just sometimes get the pull too much, but then we fall into scenarios where when does the appreciation stop and the aggression to move forward begin?
Well, those are good questions, and it's difficult because a little bit like we were talking about in the broadcasting industry, you adapt or perish.
Right.
And I think Kirk Ferentz's like the way he coaches football, it does end up really giving you a chance to win close games in the margins with the defense and special teams.
Right.
But in the evolution of the game, there's so much emphasis now on offensive fireworks,
Yeah.
and Iowa just looks out of step. It looks like you went back into time in the late 1990s and you're watching an offense from
That's
back then.
yeah.
And now, like you see what Mike McDaniel's doing with the Miami Dolphins, they put up 700 yards and 70 points. And the entire design, much like it was for Mike Leach and many other coaches, is
Yeah.
these route trees where you're trying to get people trying to use the whole field and get
Yeah.
people into open space and create mismatches and then get those fast guys
Use
the
the
ball.
speed. Yeah.
Use the speed, right? Exactly. Iowa's not doing that. I mean, it's good if you're a tight end because they're kind of tight end you, like you
Yeah.
mentioned,
Right.
tight ends all over the National Football League, and they just
I
lost
think we're watching one
this year.
right now in Luke Musgrave. I mean, that dude's
Yeah,
going to be a
yeah.
generational talent in the NFL. I mean, yeah,
So
absolutely.
Well, Keith, I had a
it's just they I think they need to update the offense to give themselves a chance to compete. Like that so far this season, the wide receivers have been targeted on fewer than 40% of the passes from
right.
Cade McNamara. That is by
Yeah.
far the lowest percentage in the country. And most of those haven't been completed either. They brought that
Oh,
receiver over from Ohio State, Caleb Brown. He has yet to catch a pass 4 games into the
unbelievable.
season. And
Yeah.
people were really excited when he decided to transfer to Iowa. So it it's an uncomfortable conversation right now for Hawkeye fans because they
Right.
appreciate Kirk Ferentz. They're not
Yeah.
trying to push him out the door. They feel like he should be able to call his own shot of when he
Right.
leaves, much like Hayden Fry before him. It's really
Yeah.
remarkable. Iowa's had 2 head coaches in nearly 50 years. I
Yeah.
mean, no one else is close to that.
No.
No, no, that's like the Green Bay Packers and their quarterbacks. It's really you could pick them small amounts out of a basket. But I mean, and to bring the point back to Iowa's upcoming schedule, looking at it, the only two real games I see that could give them trouble is maybe Wisconsin and maybe Rutgers. But otherwise, you're right. I mean, they could be walking through, and they could. There's a lot of time to right the ship for Iowa.
There is, and the loss will start to feel better over
Yeah.
time, and then we'll probably be back with the kind of discussions we had last year after the season when it's like, okay, what's going to change about the offense? Well,
Hmm.
we're bringing in Cade McNamara. Fantastic. They got fans all excited. We're bringing in these receivers, got a tight end coming in from Michigan. People got all fired up. But even with these new pieces, these proven pieces, the offense kind of looks the same. But
Yeah.
then, yeah, if they do end up 9-3 or 10-2, it's back to like, well, what do you expect? The point is to try to win the games. Is
Yeah.
that not enough? Because Wisconsin's in a coaching transition year, even though that game's on the road. That's a winnable game
Yeah.
probably for Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see where all that ends up being when
What?
it's all said and done.
And to add on to your point, absolutely. When you get into the playoffs, when you get into championship mindset, you start looking at the teams that have multiple ways to win. And
Mhm.
the teams that can beat you playing your game or their game or any game you bring to the table are generally the ones that go on to win those championships. when you're looking at a team that goes, okay, if we do it this way and it stays right here, we've got a chance. I got to tell you, you don't got a very good chance.
Yeah, I think the philosophy at Iowa and Iowa State to some degree has to be got to do a little more with less, because you're not going to
Yeah.
have Michigan's 4 and 5 star recruits. You're not going to have Ohio State's 4 and 5 star recruits. But Iowa has done over time a great job of coaching up the Jack Campbells who plays for the
Yeah.
Lions now. Just
Yeah.
you get a lot of 2 and 3 star guys that become NFL players that they develop really good. The problem develop really well. The problem is you don't see a lot of those guys coming out of the receiver position, or
Right.
lately haven't been the running back position. A few quarterbacks here and there, CJ Beathard, but like Charlie Jones, who, if you follow the Big Ten, he caught 25 or so passes for Iowa, transferred to Purdue for his bonus COVID year, caught 110 passes in one season, led the nation in receiving, and now is playing in the NFL. That's something probably needs to change there for Iowa's offense to attract those skill position players. Because I think right now, and maybe it's what you were asking about Cade McNamara, like is he apparently gave a great speech after that humbling loss to Penn State and fired up his team and kept everybody together. So he seems like a genuinely good guy and a good leader.
Very
But
much
Right.
so.
yeah,
That's, I mean, that's what we witnessed at
Yeah,
Michigan.
we got to see it firsthand. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
And the
okay,
entire
good.
locker room, I mean, the entire Michigan locker room when he left, I've never seen somebody get goodbyes in a transfer portal. Maybe I haven't been looking,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the amount of players that came out on X that wished Cade nothing but wonderful things.
And you know what?
and-
Yeah, you've got
Go
negative
ahead.
fans. You have negative fans everywhere. You see it. I mean,
Sure.
you're on the Facebook. You see it all the time with the comments. So
Well,
Oh,
and we
sure. We
expected big things from Cade in Iowa, watching what he did in Michigan too. So like it's very shocking to us. And that's why those comments came off befuddling, I guess would be the best word.
especially in the context of he gave a pretty well-known quote, at least locally. It was 6 months ago or so when he was like, yeah, just keep thinking we have a terrible offense. I want everybody to keep thinking
Right.
that we're
yep.
uh, uh, crappy. I think he used the different word. I don't know what the profanity standard is here. So,
Oh,
but
no,
he,
no,
he
you
was
can say
he was
whatever. It's fine.
I'm an Army
yeah, he was
infantryman,
very,
so
he was spirited about it. You could tell
Yeah.
that he too thought things were going to be different.
yeah,
And 4 or 5 games from now, it may feel completely different, because
absolutely.
Penn State, I do try to point out to some of the people, especially the critics, because you're right, on Facebook and Twitter, I tend to pay too much attention to the extremes, whether it's
Yeah.
politics or sports. You have the really loud people on
Yeah.
both extremes.
Yep.
And most people are, somewhere reasonably in the middle and have a more nuanced take. But it's hard to ignore these loud people that are making all this noise. And I do try to remind them, don't forget here too, Penn State looks like the Nittany Lions might be really good. Like
Him and I
just
get into many arguments about Penn State. He thinks they're beat Michigan good, and I'm that crazy Michigan fan who goes,
I'm a
I
Michigan
can't do
fan, but I'm
nothing.
also a realist. I
He's a
what I
realist.
see, and I break down games a lot, and I'm not always right. I'm an armchair quarterback analyst, yeah.
Yeah,
But what I've seen from Penn
they
State
are
so far,
good.
it looks like the best team in the Big Ten.
They look very, very good.
I
they
mean,
they looked good, and that atmosphere. I haven't been to a whiteout, but that was really impressive.
Yeah.
110,000 people
Yeah.
making all that noise. That's a tough atmosphere to play in, and I don't think anything was going to change that game in Iowa's
No.
favor. But the one thing you can't have happen is to open with a good drive and then Eric All fumbles
Yep.
the ball away, and it just seemed like Iowa never recovered from that moment on, and some of that is just Penn State is that good.
Well, Keith, we wanted to bring one thing up before we left. Your RVTV, there is there's quite a bit of interesting content on here, but we wanted to bring up this Trans Am video. You're getting
Yeah.
pulled over by the police, and you open up the Trans Am trunk, and it's full of beer. Can you give us any insight on what was going on with this?
Yeah, I love Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
Like I grew up with. I'm older than you guys, but I grew up with that movie. My grandmother took me whenever it came out. I was like, I don't know, 10 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was a sold out crowd. I loved it so much, and it's one of my favorite memories of my childhood is I came out and I asked her, like, can we go again?
Yeah.
And she said yes. So we got back in line and we went and saw Smokey and the Bandit again. And in
Oh,
college and beyond, I'd introduce friends to it. I know it's a silly movie, but we
no.
would sit around, we'd drink beer, we'd watch Smokey and the Bandit. So
Yeah.
I've talked about it on the radio show enough that when we went on our RV TV stop, which is just it's a tour to the city wherever the game is being played, and we stop
Right.
in a different small town and have our newscast live from those places. And there were people there that knew about my love of Smokey and the Bandit, and my constant "Let me a Diablo sandwich and a Dr. Pepper, make it fast, goddamn hurry." I constantly quote the movie. And somebody in the town had a band one Trans Am, and they said, if you can think of anything to do with this, we'll bring it over. So time was so short. They had these elaborate ideas of drones and a chase and a semi truck, and I was like, we
Could
don't
have
have
been
time
something.
for all that. So I was trying to quickly come up with an idea. And there's been so much talk around here about the NIL beers. The Hawkeyes drink the
Yeah.
Swarm beer, and the Cyclones drink the Ames Lager.
Yeah.
And I asked the police chief, and this is something that can only happen in small towns. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, would you mind? Are you willing to wear a mic and pull us over and see that we have a trunk full of beer, and then tell us we can leave? And the police chief in Manson's like, oh, sure, that sounds fun. We're gonna do that. We get in the car and we're all jammed in there, and it's kind of funny because I didn't realize how small the back seat of a Trans Am is. We got three of the sports guys all jammed in back there, and that's what it was. Just my love of Smokey and the Bandit, and we didn't have a sheriff, but we had a police chief pull us
Nice.
over
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
looks in the trunk and says, "Enjoy the game, boys."
Yeah.
So the people of a certain age group probably enjoyed it more than the people going, "What in the world is
World is
this?"
this? Yeah. Oh man, thank you for sharing that too. I loved hearing about your grandma taking you to the movies. That was very humbling. Keith, we're running up on the clock here. I want to thank you so much for all of your time, and I want to give you the floor for anything at all you would love to plug for yourself, or you're a very humbling person, and I mean that in the absolute most sincere. So take her away.
Oh, I don't have anything to plug. I appreciate being invited, and it was fun talking to you guys, and I enjoyed it. I know Patrick has gotten in touch with me several times, and we just haven't been able to find a time in the schedule. So I was glad I got a half day off today, and
Yeah.
Nice.
about to go to dinner with the family here, and
Yeah.
it was just nice to talk some football because we're gonna get to the dinner table, and there's not going to be any discussion of route trees
So
or
you
receivers into space or anything like that. So this was a pleasure.
so
Well,
Keith, you do the RVTV. You for Iowa Cyclones, correct? You follow the games from week to week. You guys are following with the RV. Is that how that works?
It's just once a year for the Iowa State game,
Iowa Stadium. Okay.
and it has its roots all the way back. The first year I did it was 1995, and the game was at Jack Trice Stadium in Ames, which didn't look anything then like it does now. It looked like a
Right. Yeah.
Division II stadium with just two sides to it. And at that point, Iowa was in the middle of a 15-year winning streak against Iowa State. So there wasn't really a lot of buzz about the game. It was toward the end of the Hayden Fry era, and Iowa was just so dominant. And just tongue in cheek, I had this idea of, this game's so big, I'm camping at the stadium. That was kind of the joke, that it's so big. I'm for a week, I'm going to camp at the stadium. And we had an engineer at the TV station, had like a Cousin Eddie type, sheriff's
Oh, boy.
RV.
Yeah.
And
Great.
he let me stay in the RV, and I slept there every night, and I stayed there every night. And then the next year we went over to Iowa City and put it at Kinnick Stadium. And I did that for a few years and eventually got the whole sports department involved. And then I stopped it because I felt like we had jumped the shark a little bit, like we were
Yeah.
doing the same bits. I'd do the bit of, I can't find the band. And I'd open up the bedroom door in the RV, and the marching band would be in there, pulling me out with the fight song, starting to repeat some of the sight gags.
Yeah.
So I stopped doing it. And the management asked me, is there any way you can bring RVTV back for Iowa State week? And then that's when I decided, let's stop in a different town. Let's make a route to the game, and we'll go to 5 different cities, one each day, and then do all the newscasts from there, and then end up in Iowa City or Ames. So we just do it for that week, and it's proven to be really
That's a
popular. And
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good for me because I tend to think of the rivalry as just really bitter and nasty. But when
Mhm.
I'm on RVTV, it reminds me that I'm paying too much attention again to that noise. You know,
Yeah.
the people, the trolls, and the people that are their whole
Mhm.
life is whether their team is winning or losing, and they sometimes lose perspective a little bit. And we
That's
go
us.
out to these towns where there's families divided, and
Yeah.
marriages divided, and Hawkeye and Cyclone fans on both sides. And for the most part, it's friendly banter, and it's a
Yeah.
friendly rivalry, and it's just, it's the best of small towns, and
Yeah.
best of Iowa, and it reinforces to me that most of it is good, and that sometimes I lose sight from the people that just take it too far. So
Right.
that's probably all you need to know about RVTV. But yeah, it said just that week, just rivalry week.
One
Oh,
more
that's
thing.
interesting.
You've been to Kinnick Stadium, so what is the vibe when that wave happens? I've heard so many good stories,
Yeah. I'm
people's
so glad
stories.
you brought that up. I wanted to ask too. Yeah, the wave.
'Cause you've been
Do it
there
if you
for it.
get a
You've got to
if you
witness
get a
it.
chance. It makes me cry every time,
Yeah.
because
Okay, I'm going. That's all I need.
the
Yeah.
windows are, you can see in the windows clearly, and you will see those little kids and the
Right.
signs they make, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things that hits you of immediately. You can't help but think like, I'm especially if you're with your kids. I'm here with
Right.
my kids,
Yeah.
and sometimes I take that for granted. And those kids over there are fighting for their lives,
Right.
and it means so much to them just to wave it. And it came about organically. It was a suggestion from one person. It was just a fan that suggested it, and it's not
Yeah.
sponsored. There's nothing to be cynical about it. I hope they
No.
can continue to have it be just a wonderful show of love that it is.
Even
Right.
talking about it now, I'm getting goosebumps. But
Oh,
yeah,
it's
every
Yeah.
time I get the pleasure of watching it, I do in my own living room.
Oh,
It chokes me
especially
up.
yeah.
it's
It's so
incredible. Yeah,
special.
do it in person sometime if you can. It'll get you.
Oh, we will. We
All
I better
right.
will.
look. Check out the game there, Charles, for sure. I don't even
Yeah.
care who it is. We'll just go just for
I
a
just want to
night
go for
game.
the wave.
Actually, a night game at Kinnick is probably one of the I always said that that's one of the best
It's
venues
good
to go to.
tailgating over there too.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. You'd enjoy it. There's a great band that plays in the lots called Van Hayden, and
Van
Yeah.
Hayden.
they changed all the Van Halen songs to Iowa Hawkeye songs. And Van
Yeah.
Hayden, it's like, you might as well punt, punt.
Oh, man. Yeah, we definitely gotta go. We gotta
All right,
interview those
we
guys. Yeah.
we gotta interview him, absolutely. Keith, well,
Yeah.
we don't want to keep you from dinner, man. Thank you
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we
much for
appreciate it. Thank you so
everything.
much.
We greatly
you're very
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.